Back to another episode here of the Science of Winning podcast. You probably didn't expect to hear from me so soon, as I released an episode yesterday, and we release one once a week here, but I've been asked to do a series of podcasts on a daily basis to cover how do you actually keep your mindset at that level of a champion, even though things around you are kind of falling apart. And I think that's very relevant here for today's conversation, because we are in the midst of a trade war, the start of a trade war between Canada and the US, and it's impacting significantly not everybody in Canada, but a significant number of businesses in Canada, and business leaders in particular, if we talk about CEOs or entrepreneurs, business owners, or executives. It's impacting them. And it's also impacting a significant amount of American business leaders as well, because there's a trickle effect, there's a cascade effect, and a lot of people are trying to figure out what to do, how to salvage their business. A lot of people have had plans to grow their business this year, just like we did, and they're feeling a little bit stifled because of this whole trade war aspect. So how do you actually maintain what I call a masterful mindset? So I'm going to be doing a series of that. And today's topic is about expansion versus contraction. Very, very important, because the moment that most people, when they feel uncertainty, they tend to contract. They contract on 4 different levels. They contract on a mental level, they contract on an emotional level, they contract on a physical level, and they contract on a spiritual level. Let me just give you an example here. When people are going through challenges, typically, if we talk about it from a mental perspective, it creates a mental block. When we are faced with all of these issues, and it's been shown through science, and I'm going to do another episode on this, that we are less creative when we go through periods of anxiety. And my background, if you don't know, is in performance psychology and neuroscience. And so I'm going to share some of the psychology with you, is that when people are in a state of anxiety, they aren't in a mode of being creative and coming up with opportunities. So that's the first part. That's what happens when people contract mentally. When they contract emotionally, what ends up happening is they close off on relationships. And there's other challenges as well. But you'll notice that when people are, and you probably have experienced this, is that people will react differently now because they're more moody. So you might be going through this. You might be a business leader that's been impacted by these tariffs, and now you go home and you're feeling more moody with your family members, right? You're more on edge. There's people that can set you off easier. So there's an emotional contraction as well, right? Some people even isolate themselves. And then there's a physical contraction. If you see anybody in a high state of anxiety or angst, their body is typically contracted the way they sit, right? They're more in a smaller position, in a cratered position versus an expanded position where their body is actually out, like chest out. So that's how physically people are impacted, their physiology as well. And then also a spiritual impact, which basically people start to lose faith. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be religious, but for the vast majority of people, 85% of people and above actually believe in something greater. And there's a spiritual contraction as well. So what do we need to do? We need to continue to expand rather than contract. It's very important for us as business leaders to focus on our own expansion, because we will then make better decisions and take more effective action. Remember, I'm going to hammer this home with you. Life is about 4 things. It's about making decisions, taking action, experiencing life, and then learning, right? And it's a cycle. You continuously go through this moment by moment every single day. And when we are in a state of contraction, we fall short in those areas. We fall short of making effective decisions. We fall short of taking effective action. This is what happens. We don't experience life to the fullest, right? You're going to notice that that's what people are feeling right now in this state of angst. They're missing out on things. They're forgetting things. They're not being fully present with their family members. And then what ends up happening also is if you're not able to make effective decisions, if you don't take effective action, if you don't experience life, you aren't learning at your optimal level. And then the cycle repeats and it creates a momentum. So the flip side of that is expansion, right? And this goes to the principle of yin yang, right? It's an old ancient, you can say Taoist principle, for example, not necessarily stemming from Lao Tzu, but Lao Tzu was a big influencer on that part. But basically, there's the whole yin yang forces, and this has been talked about through centuries, right? And it's not just Taoism, it's other philosophical and religious practices as well. The light and dark, right? Good versus evil. All of these kinds of things are the flip opposite of each other. If we take a look at magnetism, right? You got a negative or a positive pole, for example, or charges. Negative versus positive. Now, there's it's not necessarily that negative is bad, but it can be if you stay in that state for a very long time. And that's what happens when people tend to contract. They tend to create a momentum of contraction. And then when you as a leader are contracted, it actually spreads to other people. Right. And then other people start to contract as well. So if you take a look at, if you're a business leader, if you're a CEO, if you're a business owner, this is a moment for you to expand yourself because that's what other people around you also need. And I know that's a burden on a lot of people's shoulders. It could be a burden on your shoulders to say, hey, look, my business is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I'm losing contracts. This is reality, folks, because this is what's happening to people. I'm talking to business leaders across the board here. Many people are in a state of contraction because they are tangibly losing business. So if you're in that state, I know it's hard. I know it's in a place of burden to say, oh, I got to make these tough decisions. But I encourage you to think about it from an expansion perspective, because you will make better decisions, not only for the short term, but also long term when you are in a state of expansion, because you will feel better, you will think better, and you will perform better. That's ultimately it. Our motto at the Executive Lab here is feel your best, perform your best, lead your best, and achieve your best. That's it. Those 4 things. And there's the only one way to do that, and that's to be in a state of expansion. Let me give you a prime example here. We were in a significant growth phase in 2025. We had a lot of opportunities here, and we still do have a lot of opportunities. I think the landscape has changed, though, even for our business, because I have to take a look at it, and we have to take a look at it from a different positioning perspective, where the business that we are in, most organizations will pay when they have good business cycles for the work that we do, because we are in the business of helping people perform at their highest potential and their highest level. Executive teams, senior leadership teams, sales teams, you name it, CEOs we work with, even board of directors. And so that's typically when they're doing well. Now, the challenge here is that many of these businesses are not going to be doing well, especially if this tariff situation extends. So we have to reposition ourselves initially, and I'm sharing this very transparently. When I saw this issue arise with tariffs, I knew this was coming. I knew this is Trump's tactics. It's not just to negotiate. I'm going to share his mindset with you in another episode, because it's very dangerous from the perspective of people trying to figure him out. So I could see this coming. Obviously, many people saw this coming, that this wasn't just a, hey, look, we're going to do this based on fentanyl. There's a bigger issue here. But when these tariffs hit, even you can say, initial reaction was contraction, but it was only for a very short moment, because I was like, oh, what the heck is going to happen with our strategy to expand our business? And something hit me, and it hit me very fast, because I went into the mode of expansion. So I take a look at it. If you take a look at the yin yang symbol, right? There's light, there's a dark side, there's a light side. And it is very much like that. You jump from one side to the other side. So if you're in a state of contraction, you got to jump into the other side. And it's not a casual thing. It's not like, let me mosey on into a state of expanding. No, you got to jump. You got to make that commitment, and you got to jump and say, I'm not going to be in a state of contraction right now. I'm going to expand, and I'm going to expand in these 4 levels. I'm going to expand in my mental capacity, my emotional capacity, my physical capacity, and my spiritual capacity. So going back to my particular example, once I expanded, it hit me. It hit me that, oh, look, it's great when businesses are doing well and they bring us onto their teams to help them do even better, but they need us the most when things aren't going well. So we have an even better positioning statement. We even have a higher value proposition, because this is where businesses and leaders and organizations need us the most. They need their top performing people to remain performing at their best, making their best decisions, taking their most effective action, and actually learning from a result of that. But what we are noticing, and we know the science, we have the experience here, many people are going to contract, and that's going to be their executive leadership team, their sales teams, and their CEOs. They're going to contract. So one way to keep them expanded is to work with us. So for me, I had that moment of clarity to say, wow, we might even be in a better position here because of that. Forget about people's budgets, because there's organizations that are going to say, yeah, we're tight on budgets and whatever. Those aren't the organizations that we want to work with anyways. We want to work with progressive organizations. And those progressive organizations are the ones that are going to say, hey, look, we are in tough times right now, but we need our people to perform at their best. So this is something that we require. I'm sharing this as a personal example for you to take light of the situation. So how did I expand and how can you expand? Now, here's the tangible stuff that you can put into place. Number one, you got to take a look at yourselves, like those 4 areas. So I would encourage you, if you're driving, you can't do this exercise, you can pull over and do it. But if you're in front of yourself, in front of your desk, do this exercise. Draw 4 circles. Okay, so draw 4 circles and then label them mind, your emotions, your body, and spirit. Each one of those represents one particular circle. Now, draw a bigger circle around that. Okay, draw a bigger circle around each of those circles. Sorry, I should say a bigger circle. So another bigger circle around each of those circles. That's where you need to get to, because that circle that you drew is where you probably are right now in terms of your level of whether you're contracted or you're expanded. That bigger circle is where you need to be. So that's the first thing, is understand that you have opportunity and there is space for you to expand. Okay. Now, the next thing, how do you do that mentally? Well, first of all, you got to get away from the negativity. Okay. That's very, very important. You stay optimistic. Realistically optimistic is very important, but you don't want to go down the spiral of being negative. I would stay away from news or watch them at very limited exposure to news. Find your information from real credible resources that aren't putting their own spin on it. Okay. Hang out with people that are in a realistic, optimal state themselves. Get outside, get away from your desk and look at the horizon and have a broader, like literally what ends up happening if you're sitting in front of a screen or you're in your office, you actually end up contracting your mindset because your eyes are actually an extension of your brain. There's the big science part of it. So when you get outside and you actually allow your eyes to expand their visual perception or visual field by going outside, you're actually allowing your mindset to expand. That's one thing. Emotionally, be aware of where you're at in terms of your level of contraction. And this is where you might have to ask someone special in your life, whether it's a spouse or whatever it is, to keep you mindful of whether you're contracting or whether you're expanding. If you're contracting, you got to do things that make you emotionally joyful, passionate. You can say loving. All of those empowering emotions, those are the activities that you should be doing right now. And I know a lot of people are thinking, hey, look, Pradeep, I don't have time for that. I got to put out fires. I got to deal with all this stuff. Tell you, you're not going to be as effective as in terms of putting out fires until you deal with your emotional capacity. Absolutely. Just like firefighters going into a fire, they have to put that, they have to have the oxygen tanks or they're going to suffocate from the fires. So emotionally, you have to be able to expand as well. Then there's your physical state, your physical body, which we call physiology. And that basically requires you to move your body. Don't be stuck at a desk. Get up and move your body. B, get out there in nature. Get out there and actually experience nature because nature has the ability to enable you to expand. Here's another one. If you are in a place where you can actually see the stars at night, I highly encourage you to do that because that's a great opportunity for you to take a look and say, there's something even greater in this world than me. And this issue isn't so bad. It's not so harmful, right? And this ties into the spiritual expansion as well. You have every opportunity to expand spiritually if you are actually thinking about something greater than yourself. So the stars are a great way to do that. Looking at the universe, right? Because now we are just a tiny fragment of something bigger out there. And emotionally, we can expand. Hang out with people that you enjoy hanging out with. Hang out with people that you love. And take the time out to do that. You got to keep your emotional level expanding rather than contracting. And spiritually, as I mentioned, there's different ways of doing that. If you're a person of faith, you can go to your church or your place of prayer. If you have some other aspect or practice that you do, like meditation, that's something that you can do as well. The one thing when it comes to spirituality, I think one easy way to do that, there's two actually, is to be in a place of gratitude. Although we are in a tough situation right now, many of us still have the opportunity or still have food on the table. We still have shelter over our heads. We are still doing pretty good. So gratitude is an easy way to touch base with your inner spirit and expand that inner spirit. The other way, which is just as powerful, if not more powerful, is to contribute to others. is to go out there and help others in need. And there will be people in need if this continues, right? So if you're a CEO, one way to expand yourself is to help other people. That could be someone on your team. It could be a family member. It could be other CEOs, right? Be a source of positive energy for other people. That's going to help you expand your spirit. Now, for me, this is what I do day in and day out. This helps me expand my spirit every single day because I'm out there helping other business leaders. So I know how that feels. I know the positive impact that it can have on a person's spirit. So when in doubt, when you're feeling like you're spiritually drained, go out there and help other people, because I know there's a lot of angst in the world. There's a lot of turmoil. There are a lot of people thinking, what the heck is going on here? Where are we going with this world? You got to feed your emotions. You got to feed your spirit, more importantly than anything else, because that spirit is the source of energy for everything else. Your spirit energy, what we also call life energy, is a source of energy for your mental capacity. It's a source of energy for your emotional capacity. It's your source of energy for your physical capacity. Now, I'm going to sum it up here. You want to expand versus contract. Okay, so that is your job today. That is your action item today. And this episode went a little bit longer than I was hoping, but this is what it comes down to. The more you expand versus contract, the more effective decisions you're going to make, the more effective action, the more you're going to experience life, and the more you're going to learn. And also, if you're a business leader, the better you are going to be in terms of leading your teams as well when you are a state of expansion. When you're in contraction, it is a ripple effect throughout your organization. You got to expand, you got to stay expanded, and you got to keep those circles big. And I challenge you to draw a bigger and bigger circle around each one of those 4 elements every single day. So rather than contracting, it's not a stagnant exercise. This is an exercise where you can continue to expand and grow as a person on all 4 of those levels. When you do that, watch what you're able to deal with when there's even more challenging situations in your future. So remember, expand rather than contract.